Welcome, everyone. So we'll sit for about half an hour and then take a short break after that, and then have a Dhamma reflection and a short Q&A afterwards. Tuning into our bodies. Not what we think about a body. The felt sense of having a body. Experience. It's helpful to tune into the breath. The rhythmic flow. You can ask yourself, where is it that I feel that the breath is the most comfortable? Do you find, when you observe the breath, that it feels very comfortable or pleasant in the abdomen, or perhaps the chest, your shoulders, your face or your head? Or perhaps the whole body. Sometimes to make the breath comfortable, we need to encourage ourselves to relax. You may not be aware that you're holding tension in your shoulders. You can drop them. Deliberately relax any muscles that are tense. You might be holding some tension in your abdomen. Relaxing your abdomen, relaxing the muscles in your legs, your hips, we often forget the tension that we carry in our face, around our eyes, our jaw muscles, or our necks. You can ask yourself while you're meditating, how can I make the breath more comfortable? Perhaps it's deeper breathing, or more shallow breathing, or long breaths, or short breaths. So you're experimenting. And as you're trying to pay attention, you might have a thought. Did I turn my cell phone off? Why do we have the windows open? There'd be a lot less noise if we closed some of them. Or you might hear somebody else in the room. And you might think, why can't they be more quiet like me? Or you might remember something you forgot, or something you need to do. So these are all distractions. Even your aversion to a guided meditation is a distraction if you're not able to see it clearly and let it go. So our job, no matter how important these thoughts seem, stories about our lives, we just tell ourselves, not now. This is not the time for it. And we just keep coming back to our bodies. Without aversion, with patience. You just come back. and keep watching. So one of the things that often happens while we're meditating is that we end up thinking a fair amount. And these thoughts can move into a sense of desire, thinking about things we want to have or we want to do, or there can be a sense of wanting to get away from something, not liking something. You might think of a particular person or a situation. We can also be agitated or worried, or we might experience our minds moving around quite quickly, not feeling that we can slow it down. Or we can be sleepy, or lazy, lethargic. And then there's doubting. There's kind of not being sure, wondering, asking ourselves questions, going round and round. So most people know these as the 5 hindrances. They're seen as hindrances because they hinder the mind from peace, clarity, wisdom. So when we experience them, they have a sense of obscuring, or a sense of keeping us from understanding. We can't really have an aha moment, or, oh, I see now, it's so clear. It's kind of like the hindrances are compared to like if you think of a bowl of water and then you have some sand or dye in that water, but it's settled to the bottom, and the hindrances are when that is stirred up, and all of a sudden this clear water that you have is no longer clear. It's you can't see clearly through it. And so our meditation is often just that kind of calming, that clarity that we can have, and whatever is causing the water to be mucky or unclear, it settles. But sometimes in our meditation we are unable to have that settling experience. And so it's the Buddha talked about these 5 hindrances as something that robs us of this clarity, prevents us from peace. And one of these hindrances, the last one, is vicikiccha, which is an interesting mnemonic kind of sense of like itching or not being settled, needing to kind of move, or and this is doubt. This is a sense of I'm not sure what to do, or why is it like this, or who's to blame, and how can I figure this out, or am I really doing this right? I should be doing something differently. Why am I even here? All these are doubts, and they just keep us going without any end. So one of the ways you can detect doubt is to see that, well, even if you answered your question, does that settle things for you? Is it done? Do you feel like you can have some peace and clarity? Or are there just more questions? Or do you feel, oh, that's not right. That didn't really help. I just want to ask something else or figure something else out. So why I'm bringing this up is that we need to be very careful about this doubting that we have, because otherwise we're just going to keep doubting. We're going to keep that experience up in our mind while we're meditating, while we're not meditating, when we're with others. What should I do? What's the right thing to do? Who should I ask? And these questions can seem very alluring. Like, well, I need to know. I have to know. If I don't know, what am I going to do? It's not going to be a very good experience for me. I need to settle this. And there can be different people who have different propensities around this. Some people will call themselves doubters. They doubt a lot. They're not sure. Should I do this? Should I do that? Others can feel very confident. But that doesn't mean they don't experience doubt. So when one is hindered by doubt, the mind is unsettled. It's not able to experience peace. And it can be a very painful experience, because there is this sense of not being able to settle, not being able to answer one's question. So we might look to others to answer our questions. We might ask a teacher, what do I do? And the teacher might say, what do you think you should do? And that can be frustrating. So when we're meditating, I find this can be highlighted quite a bit. We're sitting quietly, we're trying to focus our minds. We have a sense of knowing what we should be doing, but yet there are these questions, these uncertainties, and there's a sense of not being able to resolve them. So that's the kind of feeling that comes up. Oh, this is unresolved. I have to figure this out. And so what doubt is doing is it's sort of tricking us into thinking, well, this is the way I'll solve things. I'll just keep asking myself questions, and the answer will come to me, and I'll figure it out. Whereas when we start to get a sense of this feeling of not being able to resolve something, we can see, oh, there's a discomfort in being with that feeling. Not being sure what to do, how to respond to a particular person, how to respond to ourselves. And we want to be sure, we want to know what it is to do. So again, this comes back to the Buddha's teaching on anicca, on not being sure what the right course is. Not being sure of really a lot of things. And that can be quite discomforting. And so what we're trying to do is become comfortable with, and many of you have heard this, uncertainty. So that in our own minds, when we're not sure about something, we're okay with that feeling of not being sure about it. And the more okay that we can be with that feeling, then these doubts don't plague us. And what I've found in my own life is that the answers to any questions I have, usually, not all questions, but many of them, if I'm okay with the uncertainty, the answers just arise naturally in my life. And I say, oh, that's right, that was a good idea, that's how I should deal with it. Or I might realize what somebody meant, why they, I realized they'd said something to me, and I became clear about it later on because I allowed the mind to be uncomfortable. And so what I was talking about, the trick or the being tricked by this hindrance is the fact it comes because we think that we can resolve things by answering our own questions or having somebody else answer our own questions. And so if we instead come back to what is it that we're feeling, what's the experience we're having right now, then we can say, oh, okay, well, there's something that doesn't feel right. And this is what dukkha is. It's discontent. So we're not content with whatever our current experience is. And we're trying to resolve it in a way that doesn't usually help us. Now this is very different than what I've talked about before, which is reflection. So Dhamma reflection is actually using the Buddha's teachings and trying to bring that up in the mind and then say, oh, is this what I'm experiencing now? So I talked about the word anicca, which is impermanence. We can also talk about it as uncertainty or not being sure. And we can bring that up, for example, as a reflection. Where's the anicca now? Is it sure? I've come up with this answer to my question. Is that sure? Am I sure of the right thing to do? And so we begin to reflect in a way that's actually helpful. And what we can see is that how that occurs is that there starts to be a resolution of the doubt, which is that we're okay with the doubt being present. And that's through that reflection. So this is different than, I'm not sure what to do and how should I do this? Should I breathe in a deeper way, or maybe I should notice my breath in my toes? And on it goes. Or maybe this is just the wrong practice after all these years and I just haven't gotten anywhere and I should just give up and try to be something else. Maybe I need to believe in Christ. People seem pretty happy when they believe in him. Resolute. Maybe I'll feel more confident. Maybe you will. So we try to come up with these answers to our questions, but we don't, unfortunately, often come back to the source. So that's what this sense of yoniso manasikara is, or wise attention. Paying attention to what it is that we're not quite seeing correctly, how it is that we're misunderstanding. Like we can be fooled by things that we think are permanent, but they're not really permanent. Or the things we think are attractive, but we're not really aware that there's actually something quite unattractive about them. There's all kinds of ways that we're fooling ourselves, but if we get back to the source of like, well, what can I really understand now? Or we come back to a balance of seeing things more clearly, then this doubt can resolve itself. But that comes from how we pay attention, what it is we're paying attention to. And so in a sense, it is asking ourselves the right questions. And the right questions are those which allow you to have clarity and peace. And I think many people are aware of that, what that feels like to be clear, or calm, peaceful, centered, not distracted, collected. It's sort of like being comfortable with that silence or quiet. So we want to be really careful about how doubt can hinder us, how it can distract us and cause us to just keep asking questions that don't come to any end. Anytime you're asking yourself, what should I do? Well, we have to make choices, but sometimes when we're not sure of the choice we should be making for ourselves, then the right choice sometimes is just making a choice. And then we see what the outcome is. It's usually how we know if we've made the right choice. But we do have some tools in our Dhamma belts. We want to check our morality, see if we're harming anybody in what we're choosing to do. And that's something pretty easy. We can resolve a doubt right there. Well, am I going to harm somebody if I do this thing? Am I going to harm myself in some way? So there are some ways we can direct our choices, but often, sometimes, there's just no way to make the exact right choice because we can't know what the outcome's going to be unless we actually make one. And then, hopefully, we're not plagued with doubt, because then when we see we've made a mistake or we've done something that wasn't quite right, oh, okay. That wasn't right, but I decided on something. So there doesn't have to be then a stuckness anymore. So it's just very important to try to pay attention to, for example, when we're meditating, how these questions arise for us and what comes up about our experience. Like, we might be thinking about the future or the past, but this could just be some story we have, and there isn't much doubt entering. So we might actually have times where we're completely bereft of doubt. We don't feel that. But then this kind of sense of not feeling really confident can arise, and we want to get to know that feeling quite well and have our pulse on it, our finger on the pulse of our own doubt, so that we know, I know where this is going. I'm not going to go there. And when we do that, then we can see that the resolution of doubt is usually just to know it. We see the charade. So, oh, okay, this is what's going on. This isn't going to get me anywhere. And then another doubt arises, and we say, I see that one again too. Or, as I was mentioning during the guided meditation, we might say to ourselves, this is not the time. And we just close the door on our thought process. And there might be many doors you have to close. Or if you're really stuck in doubt about a particular decision, you can't stop thinking about it, well, maybe you can say, well, I will think about this in an hour or a half an hour. But right now, I'm not going to do it. And so then maybe you give yourself some space for some time around this. But the important thing is to see that there's dukkha around it, that it's not really helpful, and that's how we see that this is a hindrance for us, it's not helping us. And we can't do that unless we see that that there's a lot of suffering that can be caused because of this repetitive process in our thoughts. And we also want to try to be aware of the fact that this sense that we have that if we had the right answer, then we would feel confident and happy, it just usually doesn't end up there. Because it just brings up, well, if I do, okay, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to buy this particular thing or talk to this person. But then what if he says that? What should I do? Oh, I didn't think of that one. Oh, jeez. So we want to give ourselves a break and just say, okay, there's really no, we're not going to be able to figure it out. Not just thinking through it over and over again. And when we do that, then surprisingly enough, what arises is confidence. We start to trust ourselves more. And we say, oh, this is the right way to do it. If I just stop nagging myself and questioning, I feel a lot better. And the confidence comes from our ability to put it down, to put the hindrance down. To say, okay, I'm not going to go in this particular direction. And then we feel confident because, oh, I made a decision and I followed through with it, and now I trust myself more. And I feel, okay, this was the right thing to do. So this is some reflections on that fifth hindrance, vicikiccha. And if there's any questions about that or any comments or concerns or doubts, you can let me know. You're not sure what you're going to ask, Shelley?
I'm not sure how it will be received. So hindrances are, I'm always kind of confused by this, so I should just ask the teacher. Here he is. So hindrances aren't necessarily what comes up in meditation, or they're specific to meditation. It seems like you could learn in meditation your hindrance. So by definition, it's got to come up in meditation to be called it hindrance? No.
No. They're happening all the time. They're not just hindering our sitting experience. They're hindering our daily experience. They're hindering every moment that we're awake. And when we're dreaming, they might be hindering us there too. So any time that you feel a particular desire to do something that's not going to help you out, it's going to lead you to attachment, to becoming, to craving, to sensual indulgence, these kind of things. This is the hindrance of desire. It's clouding your mind. It's kind of like when you have a taste for something and there's nothing that's going to stop you from getting it. And you feel that very strong urge, but you know that, wow, if I resisted that, I might actually really learn something here. But I'm not going to resist it, I'm just going to go for it. So that's not in meditation necessarily. I mean, it might be. Like how that would come up, like as a particular thought. You know, you're thinking about a story, and, oh, I'm supposed to be meditating right now, but it's kind of, I got to resolve this, or I got to figure this out, or this is just a lot more fun than meditating. You know, I just follow this story where I'm the hero, I'm the star. I mean, that's how every story is, ultimately, right? It's my show, I'm on the stage, I decide what to do. So that's very attractive, and that's our meditation experience, but that's also our daily life, everything we're doing. So doubt can just kind of plague people just walking around. I can't figure out what to do, I don't know what to do. Should it go here or there? Yeah, it can be all kinds of things. And so we're trying to be aware of it in meditation, aware of any of them, any of these hindrances. But we're doing that so we can train ourselves in our daily life so then when they come up, we're also ready to deal with them there. Because eventually you want to be at a point where there's no difference, meditating or walking around, and even if you're talking to somebody.
So does that count too for Dhamma wondering? So for example, I was sitting, looking at stuff. Oh, there's dukkha. But then something would come up. Oh, there's sukha. Oh, there's sukha. There's dukkha. There's sukha and dukkha. And that seemed like a Dhamma question that might be more skillful than wondering about the pain in my neck.
What is the Dhamma question? You said the Dhamma question.
Well, the Dhamma question I came up with was, what's wrong with noticing sukha?
Well, there's nothing wrong with noticing something.
Or promoting it. Such as metta promotes sukha for me.
And that's that's being skillful in meditation. So that's actually what's quite helpful, is to actually pay attention to, I'm feeling this pleasant experience right now while I'm meditating, so then you want to move, and that's a helpful thing. Because again, as I was talking about last week or the week before, if we're just dealing with a very uncomfortable experience, we're not going to be inclined to meditate. So we do want to find something that accentuates a pleasant experience. And this can be found in our bodies. But we can also accentuate the unpleasant. And there's times when noticing that is very helpful, but also just noticing the unpleasant can be very pleasant. Because we're not stuck to it. We're aware of like a sense of impatience, like I want to move, I want to get out of here, I don't like this, I don't like this person talking, I don't want to listen, or whatever it might be, we come back to our bodies and to the experience of our bodies, and we know that, and the quality of knowing is very pleasant. Because we're no longer stuck to our own experience without seeing it clearly. We're aware of the experience, and we can see that it's happening. Like there might be aversion, but then there's this noticing the aversion. And so it doesn't, as I've mentioned before, it's not a feeling of being stuck to that experience or that we are that experience. We're just watching it. It's like watching an actor in a play. You might be emotive watching that actor. You might feel sad when they're sad, or upset when they're upset in some way, or happy when they're happy. But once you remember, oh, I'm a person who's in a theater watching an actor, which is what we're paying a ticket to forget, then you say, oh, okay, why was I getting so caught up in this person's story? I don't need to. I can just let that lie. I'm just someone in a theater watching a play. And so that's quite important for us, because then we can start to relate to our experience in that same way. Why am I so upset about my story? You know, or as I mentioned in Friday, you know, how like a thought about a particular person, we don't recognize that as a thought. We think that we're actually thinking of the real person. They're represented in our head, and oh, this is who it is. This is my so-and-so. And when we're thinking about that person, we don't tend to separate that. We tend to think, oh, this is really the person. But it's just a thought. It's a sankhara. It's totally fabricated. They're not there. In fact, they might be dead while you're thinking of them. You know, or they could just be a different person. All of a sudden, they're just, you know, when we think about people from our past, we bring them up and we think, oh, this is the same person I knew in high school. I haven't seen them since then, but they're the same. I know they're the same. Probably haven't changed a bit. And we have no idea. And we can't even know after talking to them for 20 minutes, because what do you know? You know, what do you know from that? So, yeah, it's important to try to be clear of that, the experiencer, and that which is watching the experience. And back to your question about metta being pleasant, that's very good. I mean, it's supposed to be pleasant. The whole reason that we're generating metta is so that we don't get caught into this hindrance of aversion and ill will and anger and fear, because that's just a tumultuous thing for us. And so when we're expressing metta, which is a goodwill towards ourselves or other beings, then we don't get involved in that kind of negativity, and we can be lifted out of it.
So you said that doubt was one of the 5 hindrances,
Mm-hmm.
and you listed the other ones, but I can't remember what they were. And I'm wondering if you repeat them, and then also maybe elaborate on what metta is.
The 5 hindrances are sort of unwholesome desire. So it's the kind of greed that, or the like wanting to be generous is not an unwholesome desire. But wanting to get what you want and excluding what other people might want might be an unwholesome desire. Yeah? So it's like greed, the difference between just like wanting to help or greed, like I want to get this for myself. And then there's aversion, which is another hindrance, which has to do with like, I don't like. So those 2 hindrances are probably the most prominent. There's the I want or I don't want. You know, I like, and it's kind of this drawing in. We can even feel it in our minds, this drawing in. Or this I don't want this, I don't like this, I'd rather not be associated with it, get me out of here. There's the aversion of restlessness or worry. So it's like when the mind is agitated and moving around, and when you're sitting or you're quiet with yourself, you really have a sense of like, I can't calm this down. It's just jumping all over. It's just kind of moving. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. And I mean, you can feel it in the body. And anxiety or worry also has this effect on us. You know, we're kind of worried and agitated, and we can't put it down. It just is. It's just it takes us over. So fear is present in that hindrance, but fear is present in aversion as well. So that's the third hindrance, is like restlessness and worry. And then there's sloth and torpor, and that's sort of sleepy or kind of sluggishness is more like it. And then there's it's related to also laziness as well, but those are separated as they're sort of one hindrance, but they're so related to each other. So lazy is like cutting corners. I'd rather not bother. I don't want to get involved, and you know, I don't want to do this, and which is close to aversion, but it's also more a sense of like just not being willing to put ourselves into it. There's no effort or energy, so it's a lack of energy. It's a lack of like oomph. And sometimes it's real, like when it comes to being sleepy. So many people suffer from this in meditation. They'll nod their heads a lot while they're meditating. And this is an unfortunate habit that one can have. And it becomes a habit that it just can become actually what meditation is. You close your eyes and you start nodding. Sometimes it's true sleepiness. Like your body is deprived of sleep, and you can't concentrate. You're just falling asleep. You can't deal with it. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just this sense of lethargy that comes over, and so we have to learn to discern between the two when we need to get sleep. So when you want to figure that one out, you just kind of wake yourself up, not necessarily by drinking coffee, but just kind of throwing some water on your face, or kind of getting up, moving around, whatever it might be. But one of the things that I would encourage anybody who's meditating is to know that when you are getting into the habit of sloth and torpor, of kind of this, of like a nodding, it can be very subtle. You might not even notice it. Stand up. Give yourselves 3 head nods and then stand up. Because it's just a habit you're going to create. You're going to be I'm just going to keep going with this particular habit. Because if you look at it, it can be very pleasant. Just this, and then the bell's rung. You're like, oh, well, that was nice. I asked. I was in a Gwenka retreat before I'd become a monk, about 20 years ago, and I was meditating for one of the first times, and I was kind of experiencing this pleasant state that I was in, and I went up to the instructor when they give you these short interviews, and he said, "So are you able to do this?" I said, "Yeah." And I'm starting to notice, you know how when you're either asleep or you're awake, and there's something in between, it's sort of this hazy, pleasant, in between. Is that what meditation is? And he said, no, that's not what meditation is. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing? No, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. So we want to actually really be careful of that, because it is it's a kind of dull, like, just get me out of here state. Like, I don't have to deal with anything. And so that can be pleasant, and it can also be disaster in meditation, because that's your habit, is to be tired, and yawn, and kind of, but again, it's related to sleepiness, and we can actually be sleepy and tired, and we have to figure out the difference. But the dangerous aspect is when we don't know anymore, and meditation just becomes nodding. So for that reason, I don't always do this, but I think you give yourself 3 nods. So you have to notice it. You have to notice that. And it's hard to notice sometimes. One of the most senior monks in our tradition, I can just tell you, it's his story, he's told it in public. Ajahn Amaro, one of the other monks who was sitting in front of him told him, not now, this is when he was a very junior monk, that, you're falling asleep in your meditation. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm having the most pleasant meditations. I am so concentrated. I'm so with it. I haven't fallen asleep once. And he said, no, you are just nodding your head, falling asleep. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, okay, how about we do this? I'm going to shine a light into your face, into your eyes, when you're nodding, and you're going to see. And he said, okay, that's fine. You'll just be doing it while I'm awake, And so Ajahn Amaro starts meditating, and I don't know if he forgot about this ploy or plan, but all of a sudden, he's having this very pleasant meditation, and there's this just very bright light in his face, just this, and he's just, wow. And he opens his eyes, and his head is like right next to the light, almost on the ground. And we don't always know that we're actually falling asleep. So, at Bhayagiri Monastery and other monasteries, they'll have this all-night sit. The two venerables here sometimes will participate in that, and it's really like there can be a lot of dread about what you're going to experience, or just anger. But there can also just be this sense all night long you're meditating, I just want this to be over, and it does get to be very pleasant. So, not to harp on this, but we need to look out for this and try to see that haziness in our minds that comes up, and it's subtle. It can be very subtle, even for people who've been meditating for years. It's just this kind of very light haze, and we don't have to even be nodding. It can just be there. One way you can detect that is open your eyes. When you open your eyes, if your inclination is to close them, or your lids, you feel your lids are heavy, you're experiencing this hindrance, and you should stand up, or you should try to wake yourself up in some way. You have many choices. You can walk, you can stand up, you can go into the bathroom, splash water in your face, you can shine a bright light into your eyes. These are, the Buddha actually recommends looking at the stars. I wouldn't recommend lying down if you're trying to deal with this hindrance. So, those are some of the things. Another thing is not using the breath as a meditation object when you're feeling that way. It can be too calming. And then the fifth hindrance I talked about was doubt, so we went over that quite a bit. And then there's metta. Metta is just wishing goodwill. So that would just be, like if you think about a kitten. Most people don't want to, think about a kitten in their hands, just a very quiet kitten who's purring, and it's not moving. I mean, it's alive. But it's just in your hand. If you think about the experience of looking at that kitten, there's not usually a sense of like, oh, I want to squash that thing, or I want to strangle it. Most people, it's a sense of like, oh, this is really not, especially if it's not clawing you or trying to get away. It's just a feeling of really, oh, this is so lovely. Just a sleeping little, I would imagine parents, when they see their children sleeping, they're often much happier. But there's a sense of love there, right? Or a sense of goodwill. You don't want harm to come to that person. You don't want harm to come to this other being. So that's the feeling of metta, and we can also feel that for ourselves. We can actually, and for many people, that's a very difficult feeling to bring up for themselves. But what arises is that when we do feel that, it can be very pleasant. It can be relieving. It can be liberating, because it's so amazing sometimes to feel happy about yourself, to, as I was talking about, be a friend to yourself, to love yourself, to be okay with making mistakes and causing problems and, just having a difficult life and thinking you're the reason for it. But you're okay with that. It's okay. So there's a friendliness there. There's a real friendliness. Like, oh, I'm willing to make mistakes. I'm willing to be, just a terrible person sometimes, but I don't have to hate myself because of that.
Friendliness toward yourself, not like a goodwill toward yourself, not just like I'm saying goodwill to
No, that's one way of expressing it. The other way is that you are sending goodwill to others. Whether you are actually, getting this goodwill in there for another person or being, people debate that, but what we can say is that when you feel metta towards another person, they will feel that when they're around you. Because your natural inclination will not be to be guarded or say hurtful words or to look at them in particular ways of suspicion or anger or fear. So people feel that around us. When someone is actually imbued with metta, then we want to be around them. In fact, that can be a problem for some people. Because, for example, some teachers who are just very metta-oriented, then everybody wants to be around this kind of love and kindness and goodwill. They can't be apart from it. And so they're drawn to it. And then the teachers have way too many people around them, and then they might lose their metta. But eventually, that doesn't have to be a problem. But that's why we then can work towards something more like equanimity, where there isn't as much of the mind moving. Because metta, when we look at our minds in a more subtle way, can be it can be a little distracting, a little emotive, too emotive for certain calm states of mind. So most of us don't have to worry about that until we get to be very skilled with our practice. But eventually, we would be, it's not that metta is absent, but without equanimity, without more of that calm sense, it can have sometimes a distracting ability. But again, I wouldn't knock it for that. First, you got to get kind of skilled in it.
Equanimity is like a less emotive version of metta. You're maybe not
It's a good.
doing it, but you're at peace. Like maybe it's not like an act of I am sending a feeling of love towards myself, but I'm just like I'm okay with myself. Is it like more?
Yeah, I would say that for human beings that are, or for let's say an enlightened person, they might have a sense of this pure equanimity, right? So they are essentially okay with what everything is, but that doesn't mean they're divorced from metta. It just means that equanimity is also present. They would still have goodwill towards themselves or others. But there wouldn't have, with the equanimity present, then the metta isn't unstable. That's how I would think to answer that question. Tandon, do you still have a question?
Well, it wasn't a question, and it's very simple, but when you're talking about the hindrances, and just for me, just the last couple of years, so maybe more on that, but I started, I'm kind of a word person, a lot of us are,
Worried? Word, okay. Word.
And I like the way they refer to as the taints.
The taints, yeah.
I think it's really, for me, it's kind of changed the way I'm understanding or something like that, because it's so truly, in your everyday moment of life, when these things arise, they taint your experience. Whether it's, whatever it is. And it's so obvious, and for me, it's not that I'm very, I'm not trying to act like I think I'm advanced at it or anything like that, by no means, but I do notice that it's easier for me to just, as you were talking about in meditation, close that door, or, to overcome it, not now, thinking of its tanks. For me, that's really, I love it, the idea of rooting out the tanks. My palms stump has been cut off, and never sprout up again, I'm really drawn to that. I think it's actually useful. It has
that translation.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great word, because you think about our experience being tainted. So it's, it's like it's being almost like infected, or, it's something that's taken over in a way, or it's, it's foul or impure. And so we're trying to create clarity. We're trying to clear things away. And so that's what can be difficult with them, is that they're tenacious. Doubt or a particular desire, desiring another person, a food, whatever it might be, it can be like obsessive. The mind just can't give up this particular thing. Or wanting, for me, like one of the things that comes up is like wanting something to be, to work out. It has to work out. We have to be able to live stream at the Underwood Community Center. We have to work this out. There has to be a way to figure it out. It can't not work. And that sense of it not being able to work is quite painful, because it's like, well, why can't it not work? this is how things are. It was like 2 weeks ago when the live stream wasn't working and we couldn't get, and I was really upset about that. I could feel it. It was this, and what was so silly was, what I was upset was, it should be working. It should be working. My kids should be behaving. My car should start. Whatever, you fill it in the blank, and it's like we just don't accept it, and that's what's infuriating, because we have a desire and it's not being able to be met. And instead of kind of seeing like, oh right, this is the Dhamma arising, this is how it works. What a relief. We're just like, no, this shouldn't be happening right now. It doesn't, Dhamma or not, I should be getting what I want. It's not fair. So it's helpful to kind of accentuate that and see that in our experience when we see that we're not getting what we want, and just to be like, why is it not okay for me to not get what I want? Or what are the expectations that led to my actually being in this experience of just total aversion? I had a belief this was going to work, and that's where I went wrong, right? Just to saying, I'm going to turn it on, it's going to work, everything's going to be fine. And that's exactly where this anicca is so helpful, just constantly. Whenever you think, I'm going to go, all of you, not all of you, but most of you probably drove here, I'm guessing, and if you think that you're going to get in your car and you're going to start it and it's going to work, get ready to suffer. Because it might this time, but it won't another time. Or you think something's going to go just according to plan until you fall asleep tonight. It's not going to happen. And so you want to see that moment, and then it's very clear. Like for me, what was helpful was just to see, like, I didn't care a few days later. It didn't matter. Where did that feeling go? Why am I not upset anymore that something didn't work out 3 days ago or whenever it was? It's because I was caught in that moment believing that it was a permanent experience, that I was going to be upset and obsessed about this thing, and nothing else was going to take over my mind, and what was wrong is always going to be wrong. This wrong thing is going to be plaguing me for the rest of my life. In the moment, I believe that. I really believe it. And I have to kind of try to step back and, okay, maybe say to myself, I'm not going to care about this in 3 days. It's all right. Just, you're going to be okay. I know it sucks, but it's not going to be that way in a day or even an hour or whatever. Or maybe next minute. Maybe the next minute I can calm myself. And that's where the equanimity comes in. So we can try to remember what it was like when we were calm and clear. And then we can bring that into our minds and our experience. Okay, I remember I've had a lot of clarity before. I can just try to remember that, and then that will at least allow me to see, like, okay, I'm probably not going to be stuck in this upset situation for very long. So that really helps us. That equanimity helps us. It's a sense of like being okay, even though there's something very averse going on. We can all think of that, like when somebody has said something really unpleasant to us, and we're just having, we're not wanting to, it's just not kind of the situation that we can walk away. So we're just bearing with that. But we're able to be with it. We're able to be with the unpleasant and not have to wish to get away from it. And so by doing that, then we just learn to be more and more patient with it, and then equanimity arises because we have confidence that we can keep doing that. And we feel like, I want to get out of here, I've got to get out of here, but we don't do it. And because we don't do it, then we feel, oh, this actually works if I'm just patient and I stay with it. Is there anybody? Okay. We'll have a couple minutes left, yeah.
Listening to you talk makes me think that being self-conscious is a form of doubt in daily life. It makes me want to apply the same technique of starving the self-consciousness. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's excellent. I think being self-conscious is the feeling of doubt. So it's like, I'm not really sure I'm doing the right thing here, or God, I look really stupid. I shouldn't have worn these things. That's easy for a monk, by the way. But like, yeah. So that is doubt, and so I think one of the most important things is to try to not believe in that. So try to not believe in our self-conscious thoughts, and that's hard to do because we trust ourselves. We trust ourselves too much sometimes. And so the trust in ourselves that's unskillful is what we want to be very careful of. And we don't want to move into that kind of trusting. And the unskillful is the me. Me and my life, me and everything's wrong, me and I have to figure this out. And so the word starving is good if one is able to do that in a way that's not punishing yourself. So it's not like, I hate these thoughts, and I wish I never had these thoughts, and I'm not going, I'm going to get away from them, or whatever it might be. So we want to be careful with an annihilationist view around them. I'm just going to annihilate them. I'm going to clench my teeth. And what's often helpful is just figuring out the right way to talk to ourselves. So you can ask yourself a very simple question. Is this true? Is this absolutely true, what I'm thinking about myself? Does everybody believe it to be true? Is there any person who, on the planet, who might not think I'm a god-awful, terrible, horrible reject on this planet? Is it possible that there might be one person who doesn't think that? And then we can say, well, I guess there might be one person. And if that's true, then we can drop it. We say, okay, well, I'm obviously wrong. But I know myself, and I actually think I am. That person's probably wrong. So we just want to be really careful with that thought process, and we want to try to kind of see, like, well, is this helping me? And we want to look at the dukkha around it and say, like, this is really painful. This is causing me pain. And that's where this mindfulness comes in, so we can actually see it. We can't see something if we can't be aware of it. And the way that we're often not aware of it is we just keep repeating the stories over and over again, and it doesn't help. So feeling self-conscious is a very natural thing. It's like kind of the feeling of like walking into a room of 100 people and all of them turn around and look at you, and they're not smiling. They're looking, oh, who is this? Or, oh, I know who that is. Oh, please leave the room. That's the feeling, and it's not helpful. It's not helpful. All of us have, just through our own birth, have a right to live and experience. And some of us might not believe that, but we all have a right to our own. We might not experience happiness or a lot of happiness in our life, or we might experience more sadness than we want, but there's a way to actually be able to experience that, but not be so caught in it. And so I would also say it's not just starving, it's a sense of really noticing very carefully what's going on and taking an interest in it. And then kind of examining it from a sense of like, well, is this stressful? And if I'm causing myself stress by keeping these thoughts going, why am I doing that, and how can I try to get some space around that? And when I say, if you say, why am I doing that, you don't then want to add aversion on top of that. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that, I'm such an idiot. So there it is again. There's the same story. So we just need to be quite careful with that. And so we want to be conscious of our self, but in a skillful way. And that's conscious of how we create our own self. And that's what we're trying to be noticing. So I am noticing that right now we are out of time. So we will close for this evening. And it's very nice. I'm happy the live stream worked out. I'm trying not to be attached to it. But yeah, it's nice to see everyone and see some newcomers as well. And, just practicing and watch those hindrances. Watch them just not through meditation, but just watch them all day long. They're present. And it's not easy to be free from the hindrances. So keep a watch on them. Know them as the things that are kind of like stabbing us in the back. They're not our friends. And it doesn't mean that that they're, you know, they're what I am, because that's what we're trying not to try to position them as. But they are experiences that enter our minds, and we don't necessarily have control over them, but we do have control over how we react to them. And we just learn more and more over time how to be skillful. And it takes a long time and a lot of patience. But the reward is clarity and wisdom, understanding, peace, calm, nibbana.